The second Miles slid that manila folder across his desk, I already knew what it was. Same folder, same motion. Like it was just another Tuesday morning at Summit Tech Solutions. I sat there in that broken office chair that tilted left like a ship taking on water, and for a split second, I thought about the MIT acceptance letter sitting on my kitchen table at home. $54,000 a year. My daughter Megan, 18 years old, smart as hell, and counting on her old man to figure it out. Miles leaned back in his $3,000 ergonomic throne, all 38 years of him looking like he'd just solved world hunger. "It's not the right quarter for leadership changes, Wade," he said with that practiced smile. The one that said we were sharing some inside joke. Except the joke was always on me. I opened the folder anyway. Had to play the part. "We regret to inform you." Rejection number 12. 20 years I'd been perfecting this dance. 20 years of keeping their systems running, training half the people they promoted over me, and getting the same corporate speak every time. "Who got it this time?" I asked, though we both knew the answer. "Austin," he said, trying not to grin. Fresh perspective. Really understands where we're heading as a company. Austin, 29 years old with an MBA and a handshake that felt like grabbing wet paper. Kid needed me to walk him through updating firmware last month, and now he was going to be my boss. I nodded, closed the folder, and did something I'd never done before. I started laughing. Not a chuckle. A full, deep belly laugh that made Miles shift in his seat like his chair had suddenly caught fire. "Something funny?" he asked. I looked him dead in the eye. "Yeah, me for believing you for the 12th time." His smile dropped faster than a bad stock pick. Miles sat up straighter, suddenly realizing I wasn't playing along anymore. "Wade, I get it. Emotions run high, but this isn't personal." "You're right," I said. "It's not personal. It's math. I've been here 20 years, fixed every crisis, trained half the guys you promote, and every time it's a new excuse. I think you're overreacting." "Then I guess I've been underreacting for 20 years. I stood up, took the folder, and walked out. Not to study it or reflect on it, just to mark the moment. Because right then, I knew this was the last time I'd let Summit Tech play me like that. Let me back up and tell you how I got to that chair in the first place. My name's Wade. I was 52 when all this started, and I'd been working at Summit Tech Solutions for 2 decades. Small IT consulting firm in Denver. We handled infrastructure, back-end systems, the stuff clients only notice when it breaks. I came to civilian corporate life after 8 years in the Air Force. Communications systems, satellite networks, the kind of work where mistakes got people killed. You learn about leadership in places where incompetence has real consequences. In the military, you earn stripes by keeping critical systems operational under pressure, training your people right, and taking responsibility when things go wrong. Chain of command meant something because lives depended on everyone doing their job. Corporate America felt like a different planet. First week at Summit Tech, I watched a project manager get promoted after a system failure that cost us a major client. His only skill was deflecting blame upward and sideways. In the Air Force, that guy would have been scrubbing latrines. Here, he got a corner office and a salary bump. I thought civilian leadership would be more sophisticated. More strategic thinking, better resource allocation. Turns out it was just more complicated. More meetings about meetings, more politics, less accountability. The same principles that made me effective, competence, reliability, direct communication, seemed to work against me in corporate culture. Nobody wanted the guy who pointed out that the emperor had no clothes. For 20 years, I was the guy they called when everything went sideways. Server meltdown at 2 a.m. Call Wade. Client threatening to walk over a failed migration. Get Wade on it. Morrison Manufacturing's ERP system crashes during peak season. Wade'll fix it. Caldwell Financial's trading platform goes down during market hours. Wade's your man. The really twisted part was that most of Summit Tech's infrastructure ran on legacy systems I'd built back in the early 2000s. COBOL mainframes that processed Morrison's entire inventory management system. Custom integration scripts that kept Caldwell's real-time trading data flowing between 3 different platforms. Proprietary code that handled payroll processing for 6 different clients. None of it was documented properly because there was never time, never budget, always another fire to put out. Management thought that made me trapped, like I was some kind of digital janitor they could keep in the basement. They had no idea it made me irreplaceable in ways they couldn't even comprehend. I kept a list in my personal files over the years. Every excuse they'd given me for passing me over. We need more client-facing experience. So I took on client management duties. You don't have that specific AWS certification. Got it in 6 weeks. We're looking for more leadership energy. Sat through every soft skills seminar they offered, learned to smile and nod and play the game. Meanwhile, guys like Jake got promoted. Jake, who forgot passwords like it was his job and missed half his deadlines, but he played golf with the CFO every Thursday. Then there was Devin. I had to rewrite every technical proposal he touched, fix his architecture designs, even coach him through client presentations. Still got the senior consultant position I'd been promised. But Austin was different. Austin was the breaking point. New hire straight from business school, all that Ivy League confidence and networking energy. Kid barely knew our core systems, needed tutorials for stuff any junior admin should handle. But he had that fresh-faced MBA charm that impressed people in conference rooms, and he played racquetball with the VP twice a week. Here's what really got to me. The week after Austin got his promotion, I watched him walk around the office handing out business cards like party favors. Senior consultant embossed in gold letters. He offered me one like we were buddies celebrating together. I didn't take it. That's when it all clicked. There wasn't really a ladder to climb at Summit Tech. That was the lie they fed guys like me to keep us productive and compliant. Keep your head down, do the work, be patient, your time will come. But I wasn't the guy they were ever going to let climb it. Not because I wasn't good enough, but because I was too good exactly where I was. Too reliable, too knowledgeable, too useful as their crisis management department. They needed me to hold everything together so everyone else could advance. The night I got home from that meeting, I sat in my kitchen and did the math that had been haunting me for months. Megan's MIT acceptance letter was still magneted to the refrigerator like a beautiful, expensive countdown timer. $54,000 a year for 4 years. Add room, board, books, and we were looking at close to $300,000 total. My 401k statement sat next to it. 20 years of steady contributions, company matching, conservative investments. $180,000. Sounds like a lot until you realize it's supposed to last me through retirement, and now I needed to tap it for college expenses too. I'd run the projections a dozen times. If I stayed on my current trajectory at Summit Tech, maybe made senior consultant in 3 more years, I'd still be scrambling to cover her sophomore year tuition. Community college wasn't an option for a kid who'd scored 1,520 on her SATs and had her heart set on studying computer science at the best engineering school in the country. That's when I called my older brother Cal. He used to run logistics for a shipping company. Walked away from a VP position 5 years ago to start his own freight business. Now he runs 3 trucks and makes twice what he used to, working half the hours. Bad day? He asked when he heard my voice. I'm done, I said. They gave the promotion to the racquetball rookie again. I told him about the 12 rejections, the endless excuses, Austin's smug grin. Said I felt like an idiot for ever believing things would change. Cal let me vent until I ran out of steam. Then he said something that rewired my entire thinking. Stop playing their game, Wade. Build your own game. I sat there holding the phone, beer getting warm in my hand. What's that supposed to mean? It means quit being their safety net while they climb over you. You give them everything. They give you excuses. Time to change the math. We didn't talk much after that, but his words stuck like a splinter. Build your own game. I went to bed that night, and for the first time in months, I actually slept. Because suddenly I had a plan. I got up before my alarm the next morning with something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. What I called the quiet exit started that day. Never said it out loud, just something I repeated to myself every morning on the drive in. This wasn't about getting even or proving a point. This was about getting out with everything that made me valuable. Month 1 and 2 were all about documentation and assessment. I started auditing every system I'd touched in 20 years. Not the official documentation. That was mostly garbage, written by people who didn't understand the actual architecture. I mapped out the real infrastructure, the stuff that actually kept things running. Morrison Manufacturing's inventory system, built on a COBOL mainframe I'd inherited and rebuilt 3 times over the years. The integration between their production floor scanners and their accounting software went through custom scripts I'd written in 2005. When their system crashed, I was the only one who knew which tables to rebuild and in what order. Caldwell Financial was even more dependent. Their high-frequency trading platform relied on real-time data feeds I'd integrated from 4 different sources. The latency optimization routines were coded in a mix of C++ and assembly language that nobody else at Summit Tech could even read, let alone modify. When microseconds meant millions in trading profits, they needed someone who understood both the business logic and the hardware limitations. I started a private repository, not on company servers, but on my personal cloud storage. Every critical fix, every custom workaround, every piece of tribal knowledge that wasn't written down anywhere. If Summit Tech wanted to pretend I was just another replaceable cog, I'd document exactly what they'd be losing. Month 3 and 4 were about client relationships. I began having different conversations with our major accounts, not violating any policies, just being more present in ways that mattered. When Morrison's CTO called about their quarterly infrastructure review, instead of routing through Miles, I handled it directly. When Caldwell needed consultation on their disaster recovery planning, I took the lead instead of delegating to Austin. These weren't just Summit Tech's clients anymore. These were professional relationships I'd built over years of solving their hardest problems. They knew my work, trusted my judgment, and frankly didn't care about corporate org charts when their systems were down. The turning point came during a Caldwell crisis in month 4. Their primary trading server crashed during peak market hours, and Austin tried to jump on the emergency call to provide oversight. Caldwell's IT director cut him off. "We need Wade handling this directly. No offense, but we can't afford amateur hour when we're bleeding money." That told me everything I needed to know about where the real value lay. During this time, I also started reaching out to people who'd left Summit Tech over the years. Not officially networking, just casual conversations over coffee or lunch. The pattern was obvious once you looked for it. Marcus had left 3 years ago after getting passed over for director. Now he was running cybersecurity for a Fortune 500 company, making double his old salary. Sarah started her own consulting firm in 2018, pulled in over $400,000 last year working with mid-sized manufacturers. David went independent, charging $200 an hour for the same infrastructure work he used to do for a $65,000 salary. I met up with Sarah at a coffee shop downtown one afternoon. The first year was scary, she admitted, stirring her latte. But by year 2, I was making more than my old boss. The clients followed because they trusted the work, not the company letterhead. She showed me her client roster on her laptop. 8 steady contracts, all referrals, all paying premium rates for specialized expertise. "Wade, you've got something they can't replace," she said. 20 years of system knowledge, established client relationships, and a reputation for solving problems nobody else can touch. That's not an employee profile, that's a business plan. Month 5 and 6 were about building my exit strategy. I registered an LLC quietly. Keystone Systems. Nothing flashy, just legal paperwork filed and tucked away where nobody would notice. I spent evenings and weekends building the foundation: professional website, service descriptions, rate structures, basic contracts reviewed by a lawyer friend of mine. The business model was simple: lean, independent consulting focused on legacy system maintenance and crisis management. No corporate overhead, no layers of management, just direct relationships between expertise and results. Meanwhile, I had my own reality check to deal with. During my annual physical, Doctor Kim looked at me over her reading glasses with the expression doctors reserve for patients who aren't taking care of themselves. 180 over 110, Wade. That's stroke territory for someone your age. I thought about Megan's future, about needing to stay healthy and productive for at least 20 more years, about the stress of playing corporate politics while watching less qualified people advance past me. The math was simple and brutal. This job was literally killing me, and for what? The privilege of staying exactly where I was forever? "You need to reduce stress significantly, doctor," Kim continued, "or we're looking at medication and potentially worse problems down the road." Sitting in that examination room wearing a paper gown and staring at blood pressure numbers that could put me in the hospital, I realized something. I wasn't just planning an exit strategy. I was planning a survival strategy. The hardest part of the whole process was month 6, emotional detachment. Austin got promoted again, this time to lead a cross-functional team that was basically managing the systems I'd built and maintained for a decade. I clapped when Miles announced it in the team meeting. I smiled and offered congratulations. Didn't say a word about the irony. Miles pulled me aside afterward with his concerned manager expression. "No hard feelings about Austin's promotion, right?" "None at all," I said, meeting his eyes directly. "He's earned the opportunity." He studied my face for a moment, waiting for some crack to show, some sign of the resentment he was used to managing. Nothing came because I was already gone in my head. I'd stopped caring about their opinion of me because I was building something they couldn't control. They left me off key email threads? Fine. I documented the workarounds and kept cleaner versions for my own reference. They pitched my architectural solutions as collaborative team efforts? Great. I had the original design notes and could build them again elsewhere. They gave visibility and credit to people who hadn't earned it. Didn't matter anymore. The trick during this phase was staying invisible. Not so invisible that I lost access to critical systems, but quiet enough to avoid attracting attention to my preparation. I stopped venting to colleagues about management decisions. Didn't roll my eyes during meetings when Austin demonstrated his fundamental misunderstanding of our core infrastructure. Didn't even update my LinkedIn profile or resume. I just kept showing up, kept delivering results, kept being the reliable guy in the background while I systematically documented and prepared to take my expertise elsewhere. By the end of month 6, Summit Tech's management thought they had me locked in tighter than ever. I'd stopped complaining, stopped pushing for promotion, seemed to have settled into my role as the senior technical resource who kept everything running smoothly. They had no idea I'd already left in every way that mattered. All that remained was picking the right moment to make it official. 6 months to the day after rejection number 12, I walked into Miles's office at 9:03 a.m. He looked up from his morning coffee with that practiced smile, expecting our usual weekly status update. I set a folded piece of paper on his desk. One sentence centered, signed. I resign effective 2 weeks from today. I quit, I said. Simple as that. Miles blinked like I'd just spoken in a foreign language. You what? You heard me. He picked up the paper and read it twice, like the words might change if he stared long enough. You can't do this. You're running the Morrison and Caldwell accounts. They depend on you completely. I can, I said, and they'll figure something out. The letter says 2 weeks. He stood up, suddenly looking like a man who'd just realized his house was on fire. Hold on, let's talk about this rationally. You're obviously frustrated about Austin's promotion. If this is about recognition, I cut him off. It's not about Austin or recognition. It's about me being finished with this place. That's when the real panic started. By lunch, I was sitting in the main conference room with 3 people who'd barely acknowledged my existence for 20 years. Miles was there, of course, plus Janet from operations and some HR representative whose name I'd never bothered learning. Wade, we're prepared to make significant changes, Janet said, leaning forward like we were old friends plotting strategy. We've been reviewing your contributions, and frankly, we've undervalued your importance to this organization. For about 10 seconds, I almost believed her. Then I remembered this was the same executive team that had signed off on Austin's promotion while I was working 16-hour days to fix Morrison's crisis 3 months earlier. What exactly are you proposing? I asked. Director of Technical Operations, she continued. Your own team, budget authority, direct client access, full leadership role with compensation to match. Miles looked distinctly uncomfortable. This was clearly way above his authority level, and he was realizing how badly they'd miscalculated my value. What's the salary range for this position? I asked. 95,000 base, plus performance bonuses that could add another 20. I nodded like I was considering it. And the reporting structure? You'd report directly to me, Janet said. Miles would continue handling day-to-day operational oversight, while you'd focus on strategic technical decisions and client relationships. Translation: Miles keeps his title and salary, I do the actual work, and everyone pretends it's a promotion instead of an admission that they'd wasted 20 years of my career. That's an interesting offer, I said, but I'm curious about something. 3 months ago, I submitted a proposal for exactly this kind of structure. Miles said it wasn't in the budget and the timing wasn't right. Uncomfortable silence around the table. 6 months ago, I identified the exact technical debt and client relationship issues you're trying to solve now. My recommendations were in the quarterly report I submitted. Did anyone actually read that document? More silence, except for the sound of Janet shuffling through papers like the answer might be hiding in her folder. That tells me everything I need to know, I said, standing up. You don't want to solve systemic problems. You want to solve an immediate crisis. But I'm not your crisis management department anymore. The meeting ended with them asking for time to explore additional options. I walked back to my desk and spent the afternoon cleaning out personal files and documenting handover procedures that I knew nobody would be able to follow. That evening, Megan called me from her part-time job at the campus bookstore. Dad, my advisor, showed me the course catalog for next semester. There's this advanced algorithms class that feeds directly into the machine learning track. It's exactly what I want to study. I looked at my brilliant daughter planning her future and realized I'd been planning mine wrong for 20 years. She didn't need me to climb their broken ladder. She needed me to build something worth climbing toward. Sign up for it, I said. We'll figure out the finances. For the next week and a half, the offers kept escalating. Corner office, dedicated parking space, travel budget, retention bonus bigger than my annual salary. Each time, same answer, no thank you. They'd had 2 decades to recognize what I brought to the table. Now they wanted to fix 20 years of bad management in 10 days, and it was too late for that kind of thinking. On my last day, I handed over my access cards, cleared my desk, and walked out of Summit Tech for the final time. No dramatic speeches, no burned bridges, just a quiet exit by someone who'd finally stopped waiting for permission to build something better. Exactly 1 week after my final day, Morrison's CTO called me directly. "Wade, we've been thinking about bringing some of our technical infrastructure management in-house, but we'd want someone we trust running it. Would you be interested in a consulting arrangement?" We signed the contract that afternoon. No committees, no approval processes, no corporate bureaucracy. Just a direct agreement between Keystone Systems and a client who valued expertise over politics. 3 weeks later, Caldwell followed with an even larger contract. Summit Tech tried to interfere, sending legal threats about client poaching and ethics violations. I forwarded them my original employment agreement, the one with no non-compete clause because they'd never imagined I was worth competing for. Then I called Miles directly. "You never bothered putting me on a non-compete," I said. That was mistake number 13. Silence on the other end. Just the sound of him realizing how many ways they'd underestimated the situation. By month 3 of Keystone's operation, I had 6 clients and was making more in a month than I used to earn in a quarter at Summit Tech. More importantly, I controlled everything. My schedule, my rates, my priorities, my stress level. I rented space in a co-working facility downtown. No corporate hierarchy, no performance reviews, no politics. Just me, a laptop, and the freedom to solve interesting problems for people who appreciated the solutions. That's when I started building a team. Brady had been sitting 2 desks over from me at Summit Tech for 3 years. Quiet guy, brilliant with network architecture, completely invisible to management despite being the best technical mind in the building. I took him to lunch at a place where we could talk freely. "Want to work somewhere that actually recognizes talent?" I asked. He said yes before we'd finished ordering. A month later, I hired Lauren, a systems architect whose previous boss had taken credit for every security protocol she'd designed. Then Marcus, a database specialist who'd been passed over for promotion 4 times despite being the only person who understood their legacy data structures. We weren't trying to build some massive consulting empire, just a focused, competent team that solved complex problems efficiently. No performance theater, no corporate buzzword meetings. Real expertise applied to real challenges. The validation came in ways I hadn't expected. Megan started her sophomore year at MIT with tuition paid in full, no student loans, no financial stress. She called me from her dorm room one evening, excited about a conversation with her algorithms professor. "Dad, when I mentioned that my father runs Keystone Systems, Professor Chen said he'd heard great things about your work from colleagues in industry. People in Boston know about what you've built. 20 years of being invisible at Summit Tech, and now people 3 time zones away were talking about our reputation." 18 months after walking out, I got an email from Miles. Subject, "We should talk." I stared at it for about 30 seconds, then replied, "Sure, call me at 4. At 4:01, my phone rang. His voice didn't sound like the confident manager who used to hand out rejections with corporate smile. It sounded like someone who'd been chewed out by his superiors and hadn't slept properly in months. "Wade, thanks for taking the call. I'll be direct. We've lost 11 clients, including Morrison and Caldwell. The technical debt has become unmanageable." I let the silence hang there while he absorbed the weight of his own words. "We need to make fundamental changes," he continued, "and we think that starts with bringing you back in a leadership capacity." That actually made me laugh out loud. "Miles, I'm not interested in coming back in any capacity. This wouldn't be the same role," he said quickly. "We're talking partnership, equity stake, complete autonomy over technical operations. Build your own division, hire your own people, set your own standards." For about 10 seconds, I considered it. This was the fantasy I'd carried for 20 years. Finally being recognized, finally getting the authority and resources to do things right. But here's what I realized sitting in my own office, looking at my own team, managing my own clients. I didn't want to save Summit Tech. I didn't want to walk back into a place that had only discovered my value when they couldn't function without me. "I appreciate the offer," I said, "but I'm not interested." Long pause. "Wade, you don't understand how difficult things have become here." "I don't need to understand," I said. "That's not my problem to solve anymore." He tried one more approach. "If this is about what happened before, it's not about the past," I said. "It's about the future. And mine's already built." I ended the call and felt something I'd forgotten was possible. Complete peace with a decision. It's been 2 years now. Keystone Systems isn't some massive corporation with layers of bureaucracy. We have 14 employees, and every single one earned their position through competence and character. We choose our clients based on interesting challenges and mutual respect, not desperation or politics. Brady runs day-to-day operations now, and watching him lead reminds me why I hired him. He just needed someone to believe in his capabilities. Lauren has become our senior architect, designing security frameworks that 3 major firms have adopted as industry standards. We brought in 2 more people last fall, both refugees from corporate environments where politics mattered more than performance. Nobody here has to worry about playing games or managing up or any of that exhausting nonsense. We solve problems, deliver results, and go home at reasonable hours. Funny thing happened last fall. Austin reached out through LinkedIn asking if we had any openings. Sent me a long message about how he'd learned from his mistakes at Summit Tech and really admired what we'd built at Keystone. Said he wanted to be part of something meaningful for once. I thought about it for maybe 10 minutes before passing on his application. Not out of bitterness. Honestly, I wasn't angry anymore. I just didn't see the fit. We need people who understand that competence comes before confidence, and some lessons you either learn early or you don't learn at all. Summit Tech is still operating, but barely. Their website looks like it hasn't been updated since I left. Most of the leadership team has moved on. Miles stepped down last year and is working as an independent consultant now, probably making a third of what he used to earn. Last week I walked through our new office space. Nothing fancy, just clean lines, reliable equipment, and space for people to do their best work. I watched my team collaborate on a complex infrastructure project, debating solutions, sharing expertise, treating each other like the professionals they are. Nobody's looking over their shoulder, wondering if their contributions will be recognized. Nobody's playing political games or managing personalities instead of managing work. Just competent people solving interesting problems for clients who appreciate the expertise. And it hit me. This is what I'd been fighting for all those years. Not revenge, not even recognition from people who'd never understood my value. Just the freedom to build something worth building with people worth working alongside. The real win wasn't sticking it to Summit Tech. It was figuring out I never needed their permission to build something worthwhile. I just had to stop asking for it. If you're sitting in a broken chair right now, waiting for someone else to recognize your worth, stop waiting. Recognize it yourself. Build something that reflects your actual value instead of someone else's limited vision. Because sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to need it.